Today we're going to talk about the most recent bottles that I purchased in the last couple months here. Spoiler alert, I once again bought too many. Shocker, I know, but let's go ahead and jump into it and see what they are. So the first couple bottles we're going to talk about are the Nashville Barrel Company's Small Batch Rye and Small Batch Bourbon. I recently purchased these because they came in second and fourth on Fred Minnick's Best of the Year list. I was surprised to see these on the list of their small batch selection. Nashville Barrel Company does do some phenomenal single barrels, some of the best single barrels that I had last year, but I never really gave much attention to their small batches. But after they did so well on Fred Minnick's list, I just had to go get them. So outside of Fred Minnick's list, I haven't really seen anyone do reviews on these bottles. So the next coming weeks, I'm gonna do a review of these bottles to see, was Fred Minnick right? If that is something you're interested in, hit that subscribe button. That way you don't miss when I post that video. So the next bottles we're gonna talk about is actually a set of 3 here. These are my first rare character bottles, and I ended up grabbing 3 of them here in like a 2 months period. But I got the GLN and the VLN. These are bottles I actually helped pick with Esquire, and these are absolutely phenomenal bottles. These are actually the same mash bill as KOA, and this KOA is probably, I think, the best juice that Rare Character puts out. I think it beats their Brook Hills, which are double the price tag of this. These, I think they only had like 12 or so barrels of these bottles. There's a very few, they only had 12 barrels of these bottles. This yield is actually closer to like, they had 30 for release. I think they kept a couple back for their customers, but my understanding is it's probably like minimum below 60 bottles for this barrel. And typically when you get those low yield barrels, that's when you get maximum flavor. These all come in close to that hazmat proof, but these do not drink hazmat. There is a ton of flavor with these, and I will be hunting as many of these KOAs as I can. But if you cannot find the KOA, definitely keep your eye out for the GLN and VN. The GLN is a little cheaper, definitely the value bottle out of these, but the VN is also great for this price point. Later this year, I'll be helping to pick another set of rare character bottles. I cannot wait. It'll be interesting to see what codes that Pablo brings up for this barrel pick. Fingers crossed, Pablo, if you're listening, please bring a KOA bottle. I would love to do a pick of this, but regardless, it's hard to go wrong with these rare character bottles. Another cool thing about these bottles is it comes in with your built-in artwork. I think that's a really cool aspect to these rare character bottles. It's a fun part of the process when you're doing these barrel picks. So if you have any ideas of what makes a great pick, let me know, because we're noodling about what ideas to put on to the next bottle. So the next 2 bottles are actually bottles I did not get in America. I got these on my latest trip to Rome in Italy. I wasn't expecting to find much in Italy. It's not really known to be a whiskey haven, but there were a couple liquor stores that had some decent selections. I got this Buffalo Trace because I wanted to see what the 80 proofer tastes next to the 90 proofer. They proofed down the Buffalo Trace in Europe international releases because they get taxed on the proof of the whiskey. So traditionally they release lower proof whiskey over there. And then I was surprised to see this Wild Turkey bottle. This is an old edition. This is from around 2013. I was hoping to find some of the really old Wild Turkey Dusties. Maybe on the next trip I'll get lucky on that, but this one being from 2013, and I think I got it for like 30 bucks, so definitely one I could not pass up on. I am a little hesitant to open it because of how just clear it is. I have a hard time believing this is actually going to taste that great, but it was definitely a bottle that I just could not pass up. But speaking of Wild Turkey, another Wild Turkey bottle that I was able to get, and this is probably one of my favorite releases from Wild Turkey. It is the Wild Turkey Rare Breed Non-Chilled Filtered. These are duty exclusive bottles. You can only get them in international airports, and they come in about a liter size here. There is new branding on it. It doesn't look like this anymore, but there's some great news from Wild Turkey last week that these are potentially coming off duty free and will be in America in the next like year or 2, which is great news. If we can get this bottle, the non-chilled filter version, in America, I'm gonna buy it by the case. It tastes fantastic. This one, the Rare Breed is good in itself, but the non-chill filtered one is just next level. If you're interested in learning more about the latest news from Wild Turkey, actually my next video is gonna be a reaction video to some of the latest news from Wild Turkey. It covers the releases that are coming out this year and next year, and it also cleans up some of the past rumors around the Russell's 10 LLME and the buff turkey. So if you're something you're interested in, hit that subscribe button again so you don't miss that video coming out next. The next two bottles are a set, and these are some of the best juice that comes out of Old Forester for the price point. These are Old Forester Black Label single barrel picks. If you had the choice between the black and the blue label, always pick the black label. The blue labels, there's the barrel proof version, and the black labels are proofed down to 100, but when you add that water, more of the flavor actually comes out of these Old Forester barrels. They heat cycle these barrels so they get really hot, and those blue ones are just very ethanol forward. So when you add that water, it takes that ethanol bite away, and actually a lot more of the flavor comes forward. So now that I have a couple of these, I'll probably be set for a while. These aren't bottles that you need to have like cases of in your house, but if you don't have one, definitely be on the lookout because these are great bottles for that like $60, $70 price point. So the next bottles I'm going to talk about are also set, and it is the new Four Roses single barrel recipes they're releasing, except these are at 100 proof. In the past, these have been released as single barrel proofs. They have 10 different recipes, but over the next 3 to 4 years, they're going to be releasing all those recipes at 100 proof so you can get them at home. I originally was going to make a video on these recipes, but I was unable to get the OESO bottle. Hopefully that bottle comes out in my area relatively soon so I can do this video while it's still relevant. It can be hard to do videos if you do it 2 months after the release. It's not really as interesting, but I'm glad Four Roses is releasing these recipes at more approachable price points. I got these bottles for 40 a piece, whereas the single barrels, the barrel strengths, those are like $110. So, and it's not really that much of a proof down. Like those barrel proofs are roughly, I've seen them in the high single digits, like 108, 110, 112. So going from like that 112 down to 100, you're not really adding that much water, so you're not losing that much flavor, and for that price point, it is hard to beat. And for those of you at home trying to pick up notes in bottles, they actually add some cool tasting notes in the back here of what the master distiller gets. So definitely drink that, see if you get those notes, and maybe it'll help you get better at tasting whiskey. So the next bottle is a bottle that I hunt every year. I try and get every batch I can, and it is the Stag, no longer Stag Junior, just straight Stag releases. These are now in my area about $60, which is a steal for these bottles. Barrel proof Buffalo Trace juice. This is some of the best juice, in my opinion, that comes out of Buffalo Trace for the price point. I take beet tax out of it because those are just almost impossible to get. But these are great whiskey. Now you do get batch variants between all the different batches that come out, but more often than not, it fits my profile. This is probably quintessential what I want when I'm drinking bourbon, and I'm excited to open this and see how batch D is. And for those of you who have not had the chance to try George C. Stag, these are really hard to get, and the secondary on them is just astronomically high. If you can't get that, definitely try and see if you can get a taste of the Stag bottles. These are a step down from the George C. Stag, but it's a lot of the same flavor notes, and you get pretty much closely there with a much cheaper version. So the next bottle is actually one of my favorite releases from last year, but I unfortunately was never able to do a review on it, and it is the Penelope state bottle. This one is the 9-year. I personally think the 9-year is better than the 10-year, but the issue with the 10 years, they're all single barrels, so you're gonna have some variance in those. I know some people that fell in love with theirs, so they probably just got really good single barrels, but you cannot go wrong with the batch 9-year product. If Penelope starts putting out more whiskey like this, I am going to be excited for the future of Penelope. I also love the new design here of the Penelope bottle. It's much simpler, very minimal etching at the top, looks much more classic, very similar to like the Buffalo Trace style, where it's just kind of this light etching on top with a little sticker on the bottom, kind of similar here, very minimalist. I think this looks amazing, and I wish and hope Penelope does more bottles that look like this instead of the big artwork that just takes up a ton of space on the bottle. Now I know this bottle was hard to get, but if you can find this anywhere under $100, definitely pick it up. So next bottle on this list are the type of bottles that I am more intrigued to hunt lately, and that is special release bottles that were kind of one-off bottles. This one specifically is the Knob Creek limited edition 2001. These bottles are just more interesting to me to be able to chase down and try them, as opposed to like the Weller, like CYPB or the Weller single barrels. Those are just general batch products. I guess the single barrel is a single barrel, but they come out every year. Whereas these one-offs, they don't make them again. They're one-off releases, and it can be just really hard to find a similar bottle that replicates the same experience. Now, a little advice though before you start chasing bottles down like this is you definitely want to try it before you buy it. With these one-off releases, it might not match your flavor profile and not be worth the price tag. So if you're gonna go and chase some of these older release bottles, definitely see if you can get a taste of it first to make sure it's something that you would enjoy. And the reason I actually got this bottle was I was actually able to try it at a bottle share. Bourbon Drop, another channel here on YouTube, does some great content. Go check him out if you aren't subscribed, but he brought this bottle to a share and I absolutely fell in love with it. After trying it, I tried to track one of these down, saw one pop up and just had to buy it instantly. So the next bottle I want to talk about is probably the bottle that is blowing up most around the whiskey tube, whiskey internet, bourbon culture, and it is the Buff Turkey bottles. This specifically is Seal Box Batch 2. Now, Buffalo Turkey bottles, these are juice that was contract distilled by Wild Turkey at Buffalo Trace. They used Wild Turkey's mash bill, but they used Buffalo Trace's yeast, and then after it was done making it, it was then stored at Wild Turkey. So reports are that there are roughly 500 barrels of this juice, and these are relatively expensive at around anywhere from like $250 up to $350. So if you want one of these bottles, don't just go rush out and buy them. Right now it is hard to get these bottles. When local pick groups get them, they sell out pretty quickly, but with the amount of supply that these will eventually hit the market, along with the price tag on them, I think you'll find these starting to sit a little more and you'll be able to find one easily in probably the next year or so. So I definitely recommend you trying to grab one of these single barrels, be patient and get one from a group you trust, a palate you trust, or if you can somehow taste it before you buy it, that is a good option too. The next bottle I'm gonna talk about is probably the best whiskey for the price that is almost always shelf stable, and it is the Jack Daniel's Barrel Proof Rye. I got this bottle because it is a sister barrel to a previous bottle I had, and that was by far the best Jack Daniel's Barrel Proof Rye I've ever had. It stood up to LE bottles, constantly won blinds against other rye bottles, even bourbons. And a lot of people who hated rye loved it because you could not tell that it was a rye. Plus, coming in at 138 proof for about $70, it's just a bottle you can't beat. If you do not own one of these, definitely go pick one up because this is some of the best value that you can find on the shelf currently today. The next bottle I was lucky enough to get is a Wello Proof, and this is a pick from a local store here in the DMV area, Esquire. I was happy to get another bottle of this. This one right here is my only bottle I had, and it's about halfway full, so I was happy to get another backup of this. Plus, around that $75, it's hard to beat, especially for a store pick. Store picks can often be much better than the batch proof, but again, you need to trust the store that you're picking from. Every store has different palates, and they really gravitate towards different type of picks. At the end of the day, you can't pass up on a Buffalo Trace product, a store pick, especially when it's one that you're running low on. So the next bottle is probably one of the more underrated bourbons and whiskey right now, and it is these Hersh, specifically the single barrel double barrels. These are sourced willet juice, and you can find these for roughly anywhere from like $80 up to about $150. And this one specifically is a 10-year Willet barrel. If you bought a Willet Purple Top, you're looking at, what is that, like $400, $350, whereas you can get this one for $150. That is a third of the cost. So definitely, if you like Willet, try and get these bottles because to me, these taste on the top end of those Willet bottles. When I drink a Willet bourbon, I would say roughly maybe one every 5, maybe one every 10 to me is worth that price. But when you cut that price down to $150, these become must buys. So if you ever see these Hersh double barrels, single barrels with the yellow label in front, definitely go and pick this one up. Again, try it if you can before you buy it with these store picks, but more often than not, these are some of the best juice out there. So the next bottle I was able to get is probably the most alligated and hardest bottle for my haul this past couple months, and it is the E.H. Taylor Barrel Proof Rye. Now these were supposed to be released in 2022. If you look at the bottle, it actually has a laser code from then. My understanding is there was an issue with the distributor and that's kind of why they got held back, but they're released this year. Who knows if these will be released in the future. This very well could be one of those one-off releases. Each Taylor, every year or two, they do kind of these one-offs, 18-year marriage, Warehouse C, now the Barrel Proof Rye. Now I will be interested to try this bottle because I've heard very drastic reviews on it. I know Cam said this was probably some of the worst Buffalo Trace juice he ever had, which makes me scared to open it. But at the same time, Sarah from It's Bourbon Night said this was her favorite rye of the year. Another thing that's kind of keeping my expectations a little low is I'm not the biggest rye fan. I traditionally like ryes that are more bourbon-esque. And I'm also just generally not the biggest fan of the E.H. Taylor profile. To me, it lacks flavor a lot of time. It's lighter, that appley, and you don't get the oak notes, deep cola notes you get in a lot of Buffalo Trace bourbon. So, but regardless of all that, I was extremely excited to find this bottle. This was a really hard bottle to get this year, and I can't wait to try it. So that's my bottle haul from the past couple months. But if you're enjoying this content, before you head out, hit that subscribe button. That way you don't miss any future videos I put out, and check out this video. And until next time, cheers.